All right, we'll call this the Athletic Philosopher Podcast, Episode 3, The Importance of Play. This is a topic that I will not talk about just once. This is a topic that I will not go in depth and detail into just one time. This is an evergreen topic, and this is something that is deeply, I would say, inspiring, but also troubling when I think about the state of the world of sports in the world today, and in particular, what I see in the world of adult sports, which is too oftentimes a misunderstanding of how we are supposed to play in the world of sports, in particularly as adults. And so I'm just going to talk a little bit here about some brief introductory ideas regarding play and why it is so crucial as we age and as we make our way through the seriousness, air quotes around seriousness, of the adult world, and how this misunderstanding and we'll say a lack of aim around where we should be aiming our play as adults leaves us empty, hollow, tilted towards vice, but not aiming towards those higher ideals, that place where the spirit wants us to go, those things we do just for ourselves, and ultimately the things that bring us joy, happiness, peace, and satisfaction when we aim ourselves directly at them. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about the importance of play in this episode because I've been watching my daughter all week. It was something I demanded when my wife and I were figuring out what she was going to be doing for her summer in terms of summer camps, in terms of trips, in terms of visiting family. And there was a week this week at the end of July. I have the let's say the honor and the privilege and the responsibility of working for myself, so I can set my own schedule, and I just decided, hey, I want her. Like, I remember during the COVID years when there were vicious and inhumane lockdowns on us here in Ontario and Canada, and my daughter, who was just turning 3 at the time, she had just turned 2, her daycare closed. And I was a professor, and I was working from home. We had childcare lined up for 3 days of the week, but 2 days we had nothing. So I assumed full responsibility of watching her 2 days a week for, I think, about 18 months, like almost 2 years, and it was incredible. I loved it so much, and I feel like I want to give my son the same thing, but the world is not as crazy as it was, and he's able to go out and socialize and do the things that a normal two-year-old should do, which is great. But that alone time with your kids at this age, when they are exploring the world in such an important way, really just opened up my eyes in terms of the value and the importance of play. And I'd been lecturing and teaching about the concept of play and how it's related to, we'll call it, the better elements of sport in my philosophy classes that I was teaching to university students. But seeing a child actively grow, learn, fail, prosper, like investigate, be creative, explore with their imagination, the entire world of play, it really impressed upon me how important this is, not just for a child, but for an adult. And if we want to grow, learn, touch the highest parts of ourselves that are related to imagination, joy, passion, creativity. This is only episode 3, but you'll notice I say those words a lot when I talk about sports. And when eventually we get some people on here to have some conversations, we're going to use those words a lot too. And hopefully these first couple episodes give you a sense of why I like to focus on those types of words. And having an episode directed at play talking about my child, and my son and my daughter, certainly feels appropriate. Pardon me. But this idea of play as growth and learning and as serious work really started to crystallize inside of me. That play isn't this thing we can take for granted. It's this integral part of who we are, and it shapes us, it builds us, it creates us. Um, this is based off of the sort of early developmental child work by Jean Piaget, who, you know, I think rightly observed that the child interacts with the world and creates a relationship with the world through play. And we'll talk about why this is so important for the rules of sport with one simple phrase: inbounds, out of bounds, in play, out of play. When you are watching a child, they are not in this world. When you are watching a child play, they are absorbed in an entirely different universe. Watching my daughter make stories with her dolls, watching my son smash his cars around on the floor, they're not playing by the rules, hint, hint, of the ordinary world. They're creating a space where they can learn, where they can explore, and where they can grow. And this is the most serious thing that they do all day. Any parent out there knows how difficult it is to extract out a child from the play world. This isn't something you just go and do, like, all right, playtime's over, and you stop what they're doing, right? And you physically try to take them out. What happens? They scream, they yell, they rebel. They don't want to come back. They don't want to come back into the regular world. They want to stay in the play world. So as a parent, you learn how to communicate, you learn how to navigate, you learn how to slowly move the child out of the play realm. But does this change when we become adults? Does play become any less serious for us? I don't believe so. I forget the exact academic who I'm taking this from, so I apologize. I'm not attempting to plagiarize. I'm not attempting to take something that's not my own thought. I just forget. And the phrase is quite simple. In the adult world, we have an inversion when it comes to the importance of play. We feel as if play is something that is for the child, that is for the youth. But once we graduate to the adult world, it's something that we've got to leave behind. And so the phrase, work is serious, play is the distraction, that seems to pretty well define how adults move through the world, right? We aim at work, we aim at our professions, we aim at the serious business of being an adult. But what happens when that's the primary thing that motivates us and drives us? We become unhappy, unfulfilled. We lack meaning. We lack purpose. We lack a deep sense of identity, of belonging, of rootedness, right? We end up with a life of hollow and superficial consumption where we're just buying things, ingesting things in order to fill that vacuum of meaning and purpose. And why is that? Because we're not playing correctly. We don't properly place play as an integral component to living the good life. And so if work is serious and play is the distraction, I want everybody who's listening to invert that, because that's the inversion. So it's not work is serious, play is serious, and work is the distraction. Now, clearly we have to work in order to survive. But what I'm talking about here is utilizing sport and physical activity as a means to the highest part of the pyramid, to the highest realization of yourself. In psychology, we call that self-actualization, the top of the hierarchy of needs. So when I have everything else met for me, safety, security, initial belonging, identity needs, the top of the pyramid, is doing things just for me. And that's the realm of the spirit. I talked about that last episode. The spirit drives towards perfection. It demands perfection. So play is the realm of the spirit. Play is the realm that allows us to become that best version of ourselves. So when we're talking about things like meaning, fulfillment, desire, work is the distraction. Play is serious. Now, as adults, how do we begin to correct our misunderstanding of play? And then how can we utilize sport and physical activity as a way to responsibly play that is, on one hand, grounded in the real obligations, responsibilities, roles, and duties of being an adult, but also is related to that inner child who wants to live in play world forever. So how do we do that? The first thing we have to do is understand, what the heck is play? What am I talking about when I mention play? When we say child's play, kind of have a really good sense of what that is, but what does that look like as an adult? Here's the type of play I generally see, and if you disagree with me, that's fine, but I think I'm pretty spot on here. The type of play most adults busy themselves with is consumption. We are told that the correct type of playing as an adult is to have things. It's to go on the big fancy vacation and lie at the beach and have all the food and drink that we want. It's about going to live events like concerts or sporting events, right? It's about meeting up with our friends on the weekend and eating and drinking, right? It's about watching TV. It's about gambling. It's about entertainment. It's voyeurism. It's consumption. Okay? Now, one of the cool things about play, when you start to dig into the philosophy behind play, is those things, yes, they can be considered play, but do they move us up? And when I say considered play, realistically, what I'm saying here is that play has to be related to something that we want to do just for the sake of doing it, right? Play is the absence of an external goal, is the absence of an external reward, right? When that child is playing with the dolls, or when they're playing with the cars, or when they're kicking the ball, or when they're doing anything, they're doing it just to enjoy the activity, just to get better in the activity. The moment that mom or dad comes in and says, hey, if you do this, I'll give you that, no longer play. Now we are externally oriented, right? So play is related to internal motivation. You can think about it as an end of itself. Now, when we think about those consumption patterns of adults, is this really play? Sometimes it is, but I think a lot of times these are ways that people fit in, right? We are not necessarily doing the things that we truly desire, the things we want, but the things we've been conditioned to want, the things that society tells us that we want, the social pressure of our immediate peer groups and families tell us of the things that we want. And so we kind of just go through the motions as a way to appease others and to go along with the crowd, which is a gigantic psychological trait in humans. We are at once herd animals, but also lone wolves. And the majority of us want to just be with the herd. So these elements of play that adults generally involve themselves with aren't really related to that drive of what we want to do. It's almost kind of like a settling for what society tells us we're supposed to do. Now, when it comes to sports, I think it's pretty obvious how most adults play sports. It's not at all. And if they are playing, it's completely unserious, kind of as a joke, right? And really only done in a way that is socially uplifting, right? So it's a way to get together with friends, but we're not trying to get better. We're not really going after skill. And oftentimes it's just an excuse to start to engage in some of those consumption patterns that I was talking about. So we've got overconsumption of streaming, of watching sports. We got overconsumption of sports gambling. We got overconsumption of like food and drink when people are watching sports, and not enough playing, not enough practicing sports, right? So what's the antidote? The antidote is to focus on those things that you want to do, to focus on those things that move you internally, those things that are the end of themselves. You need to go back and remember what it was like when you were a kid. And if I'm talking to some athletes out there, this is going to sound really fresh. Remember how free you felt running around? Remember how amazing it felt to work on that skill? If we had, let's say, a basketball net in our driveway, you work on that long range shot until it's smoothly going through the net, right? A high jump, a sprint, a move with a soccer ball, right? You dedicated yourself, you practiced, and then you pulled it off. That's that level of accomplishment that drives you to want to go even further. This is the type of play that adults need. Creative, exploratory, skill building play. Almost like being an artist or a craftsman. One of the intriguing definitions of art that links it to play is this idea of a purposeful acquisition of skill. So the reason I do something is just so that I can get better at it. Now, if I'm painting, if I have a musical instrument, if I have like a woodworking hobby, that makes a lot of sense. But adults are not given, I think, permission to utilize that same idea in sport. Like when I tell people that I run, that I like to get better at running, that I go in races, and the races get longer and longer, they think you're going to injure yourself. You're taking time away from your family. Shouldn't you be earning money at a job instead? Like, you're not getting paid for this. It's only acceptable for adults to push their bodies in a performative, training, and competitive fashion if they're getting paid for it. That's the message. Because work is serious. And play is the distraction, right? Wrong. When play becomes serious, the most important thing I can be doing for myself is letting that spirit go after what it desires. And when it comes to sport, well, as an adult, there is no better place where I can bring my mind, my body, and my spirit together to learn, grow, aspire, and achieve. And just because the body breaks down over time does not mean I don't get a chance to proclaim in my, it's still a one-sided battle, but we can battle against Father Time for a little bit, right? We can hold him at bay. We can declare not today and to go for it. So when thinking about the importance of playing, and this is just a very brief, as you can tell, kind of all over there monologue, but that's what philosophy is sometimes, friends. Philosophy is this exploration of ideas, right? And sometimes it's like a one-line banger, and other times you gotta throw out a whole bunch of not so great stuff in order to get to the gold. But that's okay. This is all play in that sense. I am doing this because I generally love talking about these things, and I want people to listen, hear, challenge, but also incorporate into their own lives. The goal is that we get better. We get better through the knowledge. And so playing around with the ideas in a monologue sense might be messy. Sometimes it might fail. And sometimes you might win big. But it's the end That is not really what I'm after here. The journey, the journey is the end. And that's how you know that you're playing. So, if you're out there, my challenge is not to worry so much about what is the serious part of your adult world. What I need you to do is understand that without play, and without a constructive type of play that allows you to create, you are blocking yourself off from the highest part of yourself, right? Because play is ultimately linked to the spirit. And if we demand to live the deepest, most meaningful lives, we have to be led by that spirit. You know, in the ancient Greek world, the ancient Greeks gave us competitive athletics. There's a myth of where humans got fire. And it comes from the Titan Prometheus, who stole it from the Olympian gods from Mount Olympus, and against Zeus's will, gave it to the mortals. Now, Prometheus was punished greatly for this. He was chained to a mountain at the edge of the world with unbreakable chains for eternity, and an eagle attacks him every day, eats his liver. And his liver grows back, and then the eagle comes right back the next day, and this happens forever. Why is it such a bad thing to give humans fire? Well, there's the practical of what control of fire means for your ability to manipulate the environment, but there's an interesting thing that's related to this idea of play. Fire represents the divine spark of intelligence, which allows humans to rise above the animal realm. And this really, what fire does, it allows humans to create beauty, beautiful things, right? Things that are godly, things that are related to divinity, right? So play becomes this higher end in life because of its relation to creation, right? When we create, that is a surefire sign we are letting the best parts of our spirit soar and guide us and allow it to direct our aim. And it's kind of interesting, right? It's kind of interesting, this ancient Greek idea of fire, right? It's this spark of fire, really, that can ignite that play impulse inside of us. It's like passion, it's like desire, imagination, creativity, joy. So for you listening out there, I want you to simply just remember one thing from this podcast, which is play is serious, work is the distraction. Play is serious, work is the distraction, and I want you to apply it. I want you to apply it creatively. You're an adult. You've been told not to develop a skill just for the sake of a skill, unless it's an acceptable hobby. And sports are not an acceptable hobby for an adult. Sport participation is not an acceptable hobby for athletes. You know, I coach on a team where we go after big time competitions like triathlons, Ironmans, half Ironmans, ultra marathons. And 99% of people look at us like we're strange. Like, why? Like, do you get paid to go and suffer in these races? No. We pay lots of money. We pay all the money for our gear, for our travel, for our race registration, for our fueling, for everything. Why? People ask. Why do you pay to suffer? They don't get it. We're not paying to suffer. We're paying to play. We're paying to lose ourselves in an activity that we love doing, that we want to get better at, that we are actively training in to improve our technical skill, but also because we recognize that the training allows the best parts of us to come to the forefront and allows that spirit to shine bright. And every time we get into a competition, it's just fun. It's just play. We're not there to get sponsored. We're not there to go pro. We're there to see if we can challenge ourselves in body, mind, and spirit in an activity that makes us feel alive and that we simply love doing. And I want to encourage anybody out there who's got that itch about training or competing or wanting to go back and play sports. You need to do it. You need to do it. There's a signal coming up inside of you, right? That is telling you to move into that arena, to go for it. Don't be afraid if you're a beginner. Don't be afraid if you've never done it. There's that wisdom inside of you, right? That is telling you that if you go after this, things in your life will improve. Which things? It's hard to say. Everybody's different. Everybody requires something different at different points in their lives. So it's really an individualized journey, which is also another thing. Just because somebody loves sports and another person loves music doesn't mean that person's got to play sports or that person's got to play music. What I want to do is give permission to the adult who used to find themselves through competing in sports to go back, give yourself permission to re-enter that play world as an adult and recognize that it is not trivial, a distraction, or a waste of time, but something that is deeply valuable, deeply meaningful, deeply purposeful, and deeply impactful on our ability to live our best lives. So, go get in the game. Have fun. Get better. Try hard. Fall down. Get up. Struggle. Persevere. Grind. Be resilient. Embrace the competition. Prepare, train, transcend. This is not trivial. This is not the distraction. Sitting your butt on the couch, watching other people become heroes is the distraction. Get into the arena and become a hero yourself. And do it by playing. It's the most serious thing you can do. Have fun, friends.